All right, what's up, everyone? We are back with another DFS Army MMA kill shot. Today, we're looking at UFC 265, Gane versus Lewis. All right, welcome back to another Killshot MMA podcast. My name is Kevin Allen, aka the Geek from DFS Army. And I've got the MMA Dream Team with me today to break down the entire UFC 265 card from a DraftKings perspective. We start with the sleeveless one himself, BigMarley. What's up, my man?
Not much. Hoping to have another good week. We got a pay-per-view, so bigger prizes, $200K up top. I always love seeing that.
Hell yeah. And known throughout the industry as the GOAT of UFC breakdowns, Dan Levi. What's up, my brother?
What up, man? Just excited. You know, my boy Jared Nitrain Gooden took care of business, put Georgia on his back and represented. And now it's time for another pay-per-view.
Nitrain, man. He did represent, and that was a great call across the board on the kill shot last week by you and Marley. So let's keep it going, man. Last week's card was a little bit strange. Obviously, there was a lot of underdog wins. The actual nuts lineup on DraftKings last week, the winning lineup, was really excuse me, really difficult to achieve because it involved having way more underdogs, leaving tons of salary on the table. So good luck to everybody, good job for everybody who made money last week. The nuts lineup actually was solo. So we had a 100K solo winner last week. Pretty impressive. And, you know, of course I went back with the optimizer and messed around with it. Took a little bit of work to actually have it churn out a lineup that left that much salary on the table. But boys, we got another really good card. We got a pay-per-view this week, UFC. I think a pretty exciting main event. But we have a card also that happens to mirror a lot of what we saw last week, where the pay-up options don't look as sexy as they generally do from a fantasy scoring perspective. We'll go all through that. And a lot of these fights are really close odds. Pick 'em. We even have a pick 'em fighter in Victoria Leonardo, who's priced like a supreme underdog. That should be really interesting. So let's get started, boys. Right at the top of this card, first fight of the night, Johnny Munoz taking on Jamie Simmons. Munoz is coming in at minus 265, Simmons at plus 110. As you'll note by the chart here, the money has been flowing pretty regularly in on Munoz here. And the fight goes to decision prop plus 100. So about even odds for an inside the distance finish. Dan, tell me about these two fighters, man. What can we expect in terms of how this fight might play out?
Yeah, I mean, I think on paper it's jiu-jitsu versus wrestling. You got Johnny Munoz, I believe he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, taking on a former wrestler and Jamie Simmons. So that's going to be intriguing in itself. And oftentimes when you get two grapplers, they tend to stand and bang. But I think that Munoz jiu-jitsu might be good enough to where he feels comfortable going out there and getting takedowns on a guy like Simmons. And if he does that, you already know the deal if you put a wrestler on their back. So I agree with Munoz being favored, maybe not minus 270-ish, but I definitely agree with him being favored, and I'll pick him to win the fight.
There we go. Do you think that, you know, Simmons, neither one of these guys looked very good in their UFC debut? I mean, how much should we take away from Simmons just kind of getting murked against Giga, or will this play out really different? Does that matter?
Well, Munoz looked pretty good in his UFC debut. I don't even know how he lost that fight. I think he had a point taken, and that had something to do with it, but I still think he should have won. He kind of dominated that fight. Would have scored, 93 points if in a win if they gave it to him. So I was impressed with Munoz. And Simmons, I'm not impressed with that. I'm not really looking at the Giga fight. He shouldn't have been in that fight in the first place, but I really don't think he's, Munoz UFC level either. I just don't think he's ready for the big leagues, and he's a wrestler with an overhand right. That's kind of how I see it. And Munoz, I just see him dominating him on the ground. If he's able to get it there, I think he will be trying to. And once he gets it there, I think it's going to be a long night for Simmons. So give me Munoz by destruction, honestly. He's going to be one of my favorite plays on the card.
There we go. I like it. Let's just take a quick glance at the salary. 9,100 for Munoz. Definitely a very comfortable price point for somebody who is, high potential for submission, grappling heavy. So I like that play, especially on a slate, like I said, without a ton of real reasons to want to pay up. for these various fighters. Yeah, works for me, man. Munoz looks good here. All right, second fight of the night, boys. And this one, I was just watching tape of this one of Melissa Gatto before we started this podcast because realistically, there ain't a lot of it, and it comes from a long time ago. But we got Melissa Gatto taking on Victoria Leonardo. It is now a pick'em fight, and this fight excites me for that reason because you can get Victoria Leonardo on the DFS sites for heavy underdog money, 7,400. Big Marl, 7,400. That's usually like what? Like a plus 180. You know, more often than not, you get your plus 180-ish level to go all the way down to now we got to pick them at 7,400. So that's some line odds value, and it's important to pay attention to this fight. So coming back to you, Big Marl. Gatto, we haven't seen her fight in a very long time. Been a couple of years since she's been in the octagon. How do you deal with trying to handicap a fighter like that when you haven't seen her in so long?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of, I can't really handicap a fight with her just because I don't know what to expect. We haven't seen her in like 3 years, something like that. She's been pulling out of fights with injuries, travel restrictions, but she's only 25 years old, so I really don't know what kind of improvements we're going to see from her. And she's got a good win on her record with Carol Rosa, where she had an armbar from guard. She also had another submission that I saw, and then the other fight that was on film, she got dominated for 3 rounds, and somehow it was a draw. But I think that lady was on some special supplements that I don't think the UFC allows, so maybe that helped that. But at the same time, I do expect Leonardo to be the better striker and probably the better wrestler, top control fighter. But I'm worried about Gatto getting a submission from the bottom. I think that's definitely live. Maybe she's improved her stand-up. I just don't really know with her. But we definitely have the best line value on the card with Leonardo. Even though I think she has a low floor, I think she's definitely got to be cash game playable just for that value. And I do like her in GPPs for the value, but at the same time, everyone else is going to like that value as well. And I think it'll make her overowned. And on the opposite end, I don't see anybody wanting to roster Gatto. I think Gatto's live for a first-round finish here. So I'm going to take Gatto to upset a lot of people here with that line value and get a submission at some point.
Gatto by submission plus 230, Dan. And you know, she reminds me a little bit of Diana Belbita, or maybe even like a Sarah Moros, where when the little bit of footage I did see, she's just on her back. She wants to throw up BJJ submissions off her back, and that seems like her only path to victory. Unfortunately, in looking at Leonardo, she seems to want to go for takedowns. I have a pretty high suspicion that Leonardo will put the fight into the area that Gatto probably wants it. But what do you say? How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I'm not too worried about the USADA suspension. I mean, she's only 25 years old, so when they're that young, I don't think it's as big of a deal as, say, mid-30s, late 30s. That's when a USADA suspension is, a question mark here. So in this case, being 25 years old, this just means she's had plenty of time to train. So I expect an even better Melissa Gatto here. With Victoria Leonardo, I mean, she's tough, but she's not really the most athletic, and some of these other girls can definitely not just go out there and beat her, but go out there and finish her. And you mentioned the win over Karol Rosa. I mean, it might have been a few years ago, but that's a big ass win. And to finish her in the first round, that's a huge deal, man. So the fight might not look the prettiest, but I'll go with Gatto to find an opportunistic submission along the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough. This one, when I look at it from a salary perspective, because Marley pointed out pretty well, like it's painful to pull the trigger on a minus 110 for massive salary on FanDuel and DraftKings, even though I do think there is that submission upside. I really think that Leonardo is going to go for takedowns here. And I think that Gatto will be very happy to go to her back and throw up submissions. So the question is, will she land one? Because if she doesn't, then you'll probably get a grappling heavy, control time heavy, decently scoring win from Leonardo here. But Gatto only needs to throw up one sub, and she can get 90 points, 95 points in the first round if she finishes it there. So really tricky one from a DraftKings perspective. I think in tournaments, you want to own both sides of this one. And in cash games, it's going to be, you got to go line odds value if you play cash games. And so it's Leonardo or bust in that environment for sure for me. All right, let's move on to the next fight on the card. We got Miles Johns and Anderson dos Santos, the Redux. One of these guys, Dan, had I think COVID a few weeks ago. I'm not sure why this fight got canceled a few weeks back, but we kind of already broke it down once before. The fight's back on. Right now, Miles Johns is coming in as a minus 225 favorite with Anderson dos Santos at plus 180. Fight goes to decision minus 175. So not super sexy for fantasy purposes, but how do you see this one going?
Yeah, I think that the finishing upsides with Dos Santos, he's a black belt. He's got heavy hands. He's finished guys like Ricky Simone before, and Miles Johns has been finished before. And if you put that pressure on Miles Johns, he does not like it. But at the same time, the stalling tactics, the takedowns, the cage pushing, making the crowd boo, that's where Miles Johns is going to excel, and that's where he's going to go on to probably win this decision. So if it ends inside the distance, I'll go Dos Santos, but if it goes all three, I got Miles Johns, so I'm going to pick Miles Johns to win a decision.
Yeah, I hear you there. Big Marley, what do you think here on this one? I kind of looked at Miles Johns and said, I'm pretty fading his ass on fantasy. I just don't really know what he's going to do to score well for his salary. So right off the bat, Dos Santos for me is a better DFS play because of that finish upside and just because he's cheaper. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Dan's breakdown. I think the upside is on the underdog here. If Dos Santos wins, it's going to be an early finish most likely where he scores heavily. So I definitely like that because he could break the slate at his price. And then for Johns to score well, he's got to wrestle heavily, which I don't think he will do. And that's dangerous to want to go to the ground with Dos Santos as well. Or just an overhand right, just landing something clean on Dos Santos. Those are the only way he really is going to score well. But it's probably going to be low pace from him, try and weather the early storm from Dos Santos, tire him out, and win this fight later, get a decision. I'd rather have the Dos Santos side. Give me the upside of the two. I'd rather fade Johns, play some GPP Dos Santos, so I'll be rooting for Dos Santos to get it done.
Yeah, I want to actually point out a little change I made on my cheat sheet this week for mine, and you guys do it how you want, but I've now changed my pick from who I'm expecting to win to who the preferred play is, just because this fight really actually sparked that for me. It was this fight because I'm looking at it going, if I had to pick a winner, I'm going to pick Johns, but I'm not playing Johns. So then I said, is that really a helpful way to convey what I'm trying to do here? So I actually changed my title tag to preferred play for that reason. I'm more interested in, this is the guy I'm going to play on DFS, on DraftKings, on FanDuel, and so interesting little
I picked Dos Santos to win, so I don't even need to change it.
There you go. I mean, great. I don't know, win or not, I think he's the guy you want to play. You need underdogs. You got to afford salary. So that's how I put mine together here this week. Little change. Change is good. All right, next up we've got Manel Kape taking on Ode Osbourne. Oder. All right, hold on a second. Are you seeing this? Oder?
It's Ode.
Yeah, I saw that when I was looking at it. They almost got me to type it down. I said, well, that's not right.
I know it's Ode. I'm like, what is it? Why are they writing Oder over here? All right, so he's got I hope that's not his actual name and they changed it to Ode because that's unfortunate.
No, last week they had Ryan Benoit with like ref/name right behind it. So I don't know what they're doing with names.
Best fight odds. Work on that spelling, guys. All right, Ode Osbourne, Manel Kape. Kape's coming in as as minus 215 favorite. Osbourne plus 172. 50-50 odds for the fight to go to decision. Now, Big Marley, what happens? Osbourne had that big knockout finish in his last fight. I usually think, my spidey sense automatically just kind of tells me when somebody comes off a big win like that, the odds get a little skewed in their favor for their next fight. Obviously, we all know Jerome Rivera, not necessarily an elite fighter in the UFC. What should we take away from that fight from Ode? And does that really say anything about this next fight against a guy in Kape who actually has lost a couple of fights, but really came into the UFC probably as a more hyped prospect?
Yeah, I mean, don't really need to take anything away from the Rivera fight. He did what he's supposed to a bad fighter, but now he's definitely got a tough test because Kape, however you say his name, he's definitely a good striker, definitely powerful. He goes for the finish. But his issue is just lack of activity. If he wants to throw a couple more jabs or leg kicks here and there, he's probably getting these decision wins in his last two fights. I do think he's the rightful favorite. He's the more dangerous striker, better hands, powerful kicks. But at the same time, Osbourne might be higher paced. He's got some really nice kicks himself. And then I think his edge in this fight is going to be on the ground. Usually it's off of his back. He's throwing up quick submissions and getting guys out of there. But if he can get takedowns of his own, I think Kape might be in some trouble here. And Osbourne is a cheap underdog play that I do like this week. I can't fade Kape. I think he's knockout or bust for DraftKings, but I do think that knockout's in play here. Osbourne doesn't always have his hands up very well, and he's going for kicks. He could definitely get countered with something heavy and knocked out in the first round. So I'll have both guys, but my interest is more so on the Osbourne side, and I'll pick him to get a submission upset.
I love it. Dan, on the real with this fight here.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a serious size differential? Because Manel is kind of 125 all his fights. O'Day, look, I mean, he fought Kelleher. I think he's been fighting at 135. What's the story with the sizing differential here?
No, I mean, it's just O'Day's dropping at 25. That's all it is. You know, he's naturally a bantamweight. And O'Day's a explosive, young, hungry guy. He's very, very dangerous. I mean, guys will get comfortable getting takedowns with him, and then he'll be attacking off his back with subs. He can floor people, as you saw in his last fight. So I love O'Day Osbourne. I think he's a great prospect, and I'm very interested to see what he does. I do kind of think Manel Kape is kind of ahead of him right now. But that being said, the issues with Manel Kape's game, you know, what people like to talk about is the low volume. But really what it is that he's so confident in his power that he doesn't feel like he needs to accumulate points with jabs or leg kicks. He just feels like he can counter you with one big shot and put you unconscious. And he's had a lot of success doing that in Japan, you know? So now it's about, can he come over here to the UFC and do that? And I thought that fight with Nicolau was definitely a very close fight, a step in the right direction from the Pantoja fight. And this is a step down here with Osbourne. It's just that with Osbourne, you might see a performance from him that you didn't see on tape type thing. You know what I mean? Because he's a young, like I said, he's a young, hungry lion who's an athletic freak. He's training every single day. He's young. So he's going to be making these improvements. So there's parts about his game that he might just come out here and surprise you with some stuff that you haven't seen on tape. But since I'm going to go with what I've seen on tape, I'll pick Manel Kape to win this fight. But I can't really talk people off Osbourne because I know how talented this kid is. So I expect big things from him for sure.
Yeah, I think these guys are both pretty good prospects, and I'm going back to the scoring situation, and just with Kape, just doesn't do a whole lot outside of finding a finish somewhere along the way here that tends to score really well on the fantasy sites. O'Day at least is cheap enough that a striking-based decision might be enough to get you there, a couple of takedowns along the way. But the big thing for me is neither one of these guys, at least thus far in their career, has had a ton of volume. O'Day's has just been a little bit better. So I'm going to go with that side as my preferred play this week, although I agree with you, Dan.
Can I say this, though, Kevin? That volume number is so skewed. I mean, the 3 O'Day Osbourne fights they're basing it off of all ended in the first round. So that's
really it's not a bad number, though. It's not like they're not giving him a bad number for it. Like O'Day is actually not too bad at 4.
He has like no fight time at all.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like there's you basically all 3 fights ended in the first round, so you don't really know what happens. Has he even been 3 rounds in his career? I'm curious about that.
Round 1.
Yeah, I think early in his career he was.
Okay, yeah, he lost a decision back in the day. Wait, no,
yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
a couple of decisions here back in 2016. So
okay, a lot of round 1. He goes out for the kill early.
Listen,
at least he knows what round 2 and round 3 is like. That's important.
That is good, and you know, my guy has a lot of first round finishes, so he knows what it feels like to knock a man out, and that is also that's also good. I also like the fact that he's coming down in size. I just, you know, coming down to 125. It's, you know, the power is a little bit greater when these guys move down in weight classes, assuming they're able to handle it. So I like that scenario a little bit. So I'm going to lean that way in this fight.
That cut's going to be brutal. I'll tell you that, though.
Is he dropping 20 pounds? I was thinking he was only dropping 10.
No, it is 10. I mean, the Rivera fight was originally he was supposed to fight at 25s, but his opponent pulled out, so they just got Rivera short notice and they moved it up to 45s. They didn't have to cut any weight, but he was already planning the drop down.
Okay, he was already fighting, so he was already planning at 120 to go at 125.
But now he actually has to tip the scales 126 minimum. So we're gonna see a very emaciated O'Day Osbourne on Friday.
Maybe important to kind of wait and see how he looks for that one at the weigh-ins before making any final calls.
Oh, he's a big boy. He's going to look bad, but it don't matter. I mean, he can recover and put the weight back on and go out there and perform the next day.
I like it. Man, I don't even know how to intro this next fight. I don't like to call fighters washed up. They're badass chicks, but I don't know. Karolina Kowalkiewicz taking on Jessica Penne. Somehow, Karolina's a slight minus 130 favorite here, with Penne coming in at minus 106. Decision prop is minus 360. Man, there was something going around on Twitter, BigMarley, about like how neither one of these women, outside of or how Karolina hadn't won a round in years, and I can actually say outside of maybe a round or two in her last fight, where Penne hadn't won a round in the UFC since like 2016. So really, really sketchy fight here. How do you break this one down, Big Marl?
Yeah, two ladies at the end of their career, pretty much. In my opinion, there was only one that was ever impressive, and that's KK. It's just that she looks like a shell of her former self, and she's coming off a real bad beating to Yan Zionin, but I mean, that's a much, much, much tougher fight than Jessica Penne, and all of her losses have been to much tougher fights than Jessica Penne. For Penne to win this fight, she's going to have to get the fight to the ground and rack up control time or get a submission, try to get 2 rounds by the judges if she can't get the submission. But on the feet, I think she's going to be at a huge disadvantage here. Not only is KK just a better, faster, overall better striker, she's going to be doubling her up on volume. Wouldn't even shock me to see just a referee stoppage from a lot of volume in this fight. But do I really want to risk that much in KK that we haven't seen in a long time? I don't think so. I think this is more of a fight to fade. But for me, it is KK or pass. I'm interested in KK a little bit for cash and for GPP games, just because she's a cheap favorite, and I think she should be a bigger favorite than she is. So give me her, and if she loses this fight, it's definitely time to call it quits.
I said that after her last fight, but Yan Zhangnan is actually pretty good. Dan, I mean, how do you even deal with a fight like this? We really haven't seen a whole lot of Penne in recent years. The one fight against Godinez, some judges gave it to her. It was a very close fight. And KK, much higher level competition, but hasn't looked good at all.
I mean, the way you deal with a fight like this is you don't deal with a fight like this. You stay very far away from a fight like this. I mean, when you talk about Jessica Penne, the reason she was out for a long time is she changed her biological passport, which I don't even know what that means, but it sounds really bad. And then with Karolina, she got diagnosed with Hashimoto's. So she's got that, and now her diet is vegan, which we've seen a lot of fighters. They make that switch to the vegan diet and they look terrible. So, I mean, you remember when Abel Trujillo used to be this beast and then he went vegan and he started losing every single fight?
Yep.
I don't know, man, because it's like if this was Karolina pre the Andrade fight, it'd be a max bet on Karolina, but Karolina has not looked like herself at all. Plus, she got diagnosed with Hashimoto's. Her ground game has never been especially good. I'm going to go with the dog. It's not a confident pick because I know in their primes, Karolina wins that fight all day. But right now, I think it's a dog or pass. I think she's declined enough to where this is an even fight. Give me Jessica Penne by a split decision.
There you go. I know a little bit about Hashimoto's, and it affects your fatigue. It's not a very good situation for a fighter to have that. It affects your fatigue. It affects your ability to be able to work out, to be able to train at all. So yeah, definitely not something you want if you're a fighter. I think both these girls are washed up, man. It's very tough. So I'm gonna go with Karolina here for my pick, just because Penne, I just don't ever recall her being any good. But in any fight, but Karolina has looked terrible of late. So no confidence whatsoever there. All right. Next up, Alonzo Menifield takes on Ed Herman. Menifield, minus 250. Come back on Eddie Herman, plus 198. BigMarley. Ed Herman's still in the UFC, man. He's still up there. He's kicking, lumbering around. Going to take on a scary finisher with some gas tank issues here in Menifield. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I like Menifield. He's just the younger, faster, more powerful, scary guy in round one. And Herman's 40 years old, who he's going to have to weather an early storm just to have a chance here. And he's going to need Menifield to gas out for that chance to be there, because I think Menifield's the better wrestler of the two at this point. Herman, the better grappler of the two, if he can have success getting takedowns here. But I don't see Herman have any success striking until maybe into round 2, round 3, something like that. I think he's going to be at a huge disadvantage in round 1. And if we can get a first round knockout from Menifield, then he's probably on the optimal lineup. So I like him quite a bit. Herman definitely has a path to the optimal lineup if he can weather a storm and tire him out. But I'd rather trust guys that aren't 40 years old. So I'll be taking shots on other underdogs.
Yeah, I totally agree. Herman, that's exactly his path, right? It's just tiring out Alonzo, pushing him up against the cage, grappling him, maybe trying to squeak a takedown in somewhere, or at least going for takedowns to the point where the process of defending them for a long period of time really gasses Menifield a little bit, and maybe he comes back. But my problem with that, BigMarley, is I think Herman's going to be gassed too if he tries to employ that approach. Like, it's not like Eddie Herman is a cardio machine. Like, if he tries to push and gas out Menifield, I think Eddie Herman would get himself gassed out. So I'm not sure, how realistic that scenario is. What do you say, Dan? You think Herman could last the early storm, and kind of make a late comeback here?
I think that's the big question, right? I mean, that's what this fight comes down to. We've seen Menifield past round 1 has not looked the best. That Devin Clark fight, I don't care if it was first L time. Like, I don't give a shit what excuse you make for Menifield. That was a massive letdown. Like, if you're a hot prospect at 205, you're supposed to go out there and starch Devin Clark in the first round. He did not pass that test. So no matter what happens going forward, that will always be a red flag in my eyes. And not just the fact that he lost, it's how he lost, man. The output diminished and waned to a point where it's like, dude, like, what the fuck? Here against Ed Herman, yeah, I mean, can you get him out in the first or not? Because Ed Herman, like, against the Russian he fought, he followed the game plan that you want him to fight here. He went out there, he weathered that early storm, took over the second and third with that vet savvy, and he is a serious veteran. So you got to give Ed Herman a lot of credit. But, at some point, the bottom does have to fall out from under him, right? Like, at some point, these young guys are going to come up and start starching him. It's just, is it going to be now or not? I mean, Ed's got to be like 40 years old, right? So
he is 40. Yep.
I'm going to go Menifield, but, obviously I'd proceed with caution based off how he burnt me against Devin Clark. But that fight might not even mean shit. He might just come out here and starch Ed Herman in the first round. But, just be proceed with caution.
I mean, one thing I like about this fight is the doesn't go to decision prop at minus 350, very high. And I guess the way the odds makers are kind of seeing it going is either the fight. I got to deal with that phone, but either the fight ends in that first round for Menifield, or Herman actually submits or takes down or finishes a gassed out Menifield somewhere in the second or third round. So, a lot of possibilities in terms of the way this one could go, but the most likely way is Menifield getting a quick finish. So I'm definitely picking Menifield. I like him as a DFS play, but I get a little exposure to both sides of any fight with a minus 350 inside the distance prop. All right. Next up, we've got Draco Rodriguez taking on Vince Morales. Draco It's a pick 'em fight with Draco at -114, Morales at -106. Fight goes to decision, -128. Man, Dan, Vince Morales, man, he's been in the UFC for a bit. Have you seen anything that says, hey, I really like this guy as a fighter, even throughout his entire career? Anything stand out in a positive way? I mean, he seems pretty kind of okay as a striker. Haven't seen much grappling out of him. Anything you like about this guy, Morales? And Draco, interesting prospect coming in, takes the L the first fight. See what he can do here.
The only positive thing I'll say about Vince Morales is he's got the balls to step inside the cage. So just man to man, anyone that's got the balls to step inside that cage and make the walk, he's got my respect. But, since we're talking from a gambling perspective, a DraftKings perspective, and we're picking winners and stuff, I don't know, man. I don't think there's anything impressive about him at all. I think that he's the opposite of intimidating. He's not an imposing cat at all. He's easy to take down. He's easy to outstrike. I mean, the best part of his game are his hands, but his hands are just okay. So I just don't see anything special about Vince Morales, like, at all. But Draco on the other side, it's funny because people were acting like he was some prospect. I was like, what the hell are y'all talking about, man? This guy is nothing special at all. So I don't really know, man. I'll go with Draco because there might be a little bit more finishing upside. He might be a slightly more dangerous. I just think Morales for the UFC level is harmless. And someone's gonna be like, "Oh, why don't you go fight him?" Well, I just said for the UFC level. I'm not a UFC. He would fucking kill me. But for UFC fighters, he's harmless. So I got Draco Rodriguez here to get it done.
I mean, there's a wealth of videos online of knucklehead regular people trying to get into in a gym and fight a professional fighter or a good fighter.
Right.
And it does not end well ever, including when it's a man against a woman. So don't do that, guys. Every single one of these people will whoop your ass. So Big Marley, even the 17-inch guns, I would not want to throw you in the octagon against anybody in the UFC, even a 125-pound female fighter. But we don't have to fight him. We're just talking about the fight. So how do you see this one going down in terms of Draco and Morales? I haven't seen Morales go for a takedown ever. He's going to try to keep it. We know what he's going to do. He's going to try to keep it standing. Throw some punches here, box it up a little bit. Draco probably going for takedowns in this one. What do you say?
Yeah, Morales, boxer, brawler type, definitely nothing special, but I could see him pushing forward, landing some more shots, or getting a knockout because Draco's coming off a knockout to Zahabi, who I definitely didn't see knocking him out, especially that easy. So that's definitely a worry with his chin. But I do think Draco's got the edge on the ground, and if we're playing him, we're rooting for the submission upside, and Morales, we're kind of rooting for the knockout upside. I think I slightly favor Morales if it does go to a decision because I think it'll mainly play out on the feet, and I think he can just land a little bit more volume because he likes to throw punches and bunches when he blitzes forward. But we got fight doesn't go to decision at plus 100. So I'm just cool playing both sides of this fight a little bit and just hoping for their upside, whether it's a submission from Draco or a knockout from Morales. I'm more interested in the Morales side, though, because I think he's just an auto fade in everyone's mind after his last fight where he just quit to leg kicks. He had just nothing to do with the leg kicks that Gutierrez was throwing, never adjusted his game plan. One of the worst performances of all time in the UFC, and I just think that's going to be fresh in everyone's memory, and they're just going to avoid him completely. So I would rather just go against the grain a little bit and take the Morales side, but I don't mind taking shots on both sides, just hoping that it ends early.
I'm actually pretty sure Morales had some sort of serious leg problems beyond just that fight after that one. I have a memory, and I just want to, see how long it's been. There might have been a ruptured Achilles or something involved with the aftermath of that specific fight. So it's not out of the realm of thought that Morales actually, been recovering from that fight even until now. Just one thing I'm going to say here in terms of the fade. You know who I faded the last time Draco Rodriguez fought? I faded Ayman Zahabi because that dude has never scored well, not known for his power. And of course, what does he do? He comes in and KOs this dude cold. Now, in the first round. So I can't fade anyone against a guy who has been knocked out cold in the first round, specifically by Ayman Zahabi, a guy not known for any sort of power or finishing power, any of that. So you can't not play Morales just because he's facing a guy who got slept by Ayman Zahabi. And I think Morales is probably a harder hitter than Zahabi. The inside the distance prop for this fight, plus 250 for both sides. So it gives us a pretty decent idea of kind of how to expose ourselves. Rodriguez will be going for takedowns. Morales, not known for stopping takedowns. We'll see how it goes in this one, but technically I got to get a little bit of both. I'm going to go with Draco here to get the takedowns, but Marley, I like your DFS slant where no one's going to play Morales, and just for that reason alone, facing a guy who's been slept in the first round recently, there is some merit to that from a fantasy perspective. But overall, this fight favors Draco from a grappling upside point of view, especially on the fantasy side of things. All right, let's move on to the next fight on the card. We got Bobby Green taking on Rafael Fiziev. Fiziev's coming in at minus 300. With Green coming back at plus 235. Fight goes to decision minus 146. Now, Big Marley, man, there's nothing Fiziev does that's really scores very well on DraftKings if he's not getting a fast finish. And he's very, very expensive. And I'll correct, DraftKings and FanDuel, unless he's getting an early finish. The volume isn't intense. He does not use a heavy grappling game plan from what I've seen, at least in the past. So how are you playing this one out? And how do you think the fight plays out?
I definitely like Fiziev. Just a great striker. I think he's going to have a big edge on the feet. He's got scary power. I think he can't put him away in any round. And if Bobby Green wants to have a striking match with Fiziev, I think he will get volumed up as well. It's just that's Fiziev's world if you want to strike with him, and I don't think Bobby Green is on his level. So if I can afford Fiziev, I'm cool taking shots on him in any formats, but he's not a must-have because we really need the knockout for him to score enough to pay off that salary and be on the optimal lineup. But with Green, if Green's able to win this fight, it probably means he's able to have success with takedowns, so a lot of strikes on the ground, because I do expect this to be a pretty fun fight. I don't think either's going to shy away from the other, but I think it mostly plays out on the feet, and that's Fiziev's game. So give me Fiziev by a knockout at some point in this fight. But I think I picked it like second or third round. I don't know if that'll be enough at 9,300. So I'll take some shots on him. I can't fade Green, but I'm also probably not going to hand build with Bobby Green. I'll throw some Fiziev in my hand builds and let the domination station do what it wants in MME. But since I am picking Fiziev to get the knockout, I definitely want some exposure there.
I hear that. Dan, you think your girl Adelaide Bird likes a little showboating in the ring, in the octagon? Because Bobby Green, if he's nothing else, he's going to give you a little flash, a little sexy showboating in that octagon.
Nah, I mean, the judges have shown time and time again they don't like Bobby Green. So if this fight is close, like I get people's reasoning that Bobby Green is often involved in close fights. He's the vet here. It's going to be a stand-up fight, which is where Bobby Green tends to excel. I mean, don't sleep on Bobby Green's wrestling either. But look, Bobby Green's a stud. I'm a big fan of his, but I have to go with the hype train here, man. I think that this kid, Fiziev, is faster than Bobby Green, which tends to usually not be the case when guys stand with Bobby Green, except this guy actually is faster than him. I think he's got less miles on the tank. I think his takedown defense is on point. And I think that he's one of these guys that you need to start paying attention to. I've been very impressed with what I've seen from Fiziev. So I could see a knockout. I was in attendance when Dustin Poirier knocked out Bobby Green. It can be done. But Bobby's a durable, tough vet with a lot of vet tactics in his back pocket. So maybe he can survive the decision. Maybe he can make it closer than I anticipate. But ultimately, I got to go with Fiziev here.
I hear that. Fiziev, massive range of outcomes for what he can do. You can't ignore that he's got 2 decision wins where he only scored 66 and 72 fantasy points. That's really, really bad for a decision, especially one that included a takedown along the way. So if you needed more evidence that this is not the guy, again, we're not trying to just pick winners for our fantasy lineups. We've got to pick winners that score really, really well when they win. And the only path that Fiziev has shown where he scores well when he wins is when he does it very quickly in the first round. Obviously, he's got that power. He can do it. But the odds makers don't love the chances of that happening. So I'm kind of going to mirror my Fiziev exposure to the first round inside the distance prop. I'm going to assume there it is.
I think the issue with that on this card is that there's a lot of favorites that we really need that knockout from for them to score well. So I don't know that even a decision win, like if there's a ton of decisions on this card, I don't know that he's not on it and he can't outscore even Gane in 5 rounds, So I think it's the same issue with a lot of the fighters, and it's going to be whatever you can afford. I don't see this being a card where I'm leaving a lot of salary on the table, and it might be like if I have 9,300, I'll take Fiziev. If I have 9,400, I'll take Gane type deal.
Yeah, I mean, you got to play it how you play it. But I mean, this guy has definitely shown that if he doesn't get a finish, he is not scoring well. Like we know we're talking about a 68, 75, 78 type score in a decision for Fiziev, unless he changes his whole. We've seen fighters change their approach, but I just can't anticipate that where all of a sudden he's going to go for takedowns, and it doesn't make sense to do that against Bobby Green anyway. So, that's not the right fighter to switch it up and be grappling heavy against. So, yeah, I mean, I think the key thing is the expensive guys that we expect to win, the minus 300 favorite, they tend to be over-owned in tournaments because the player on DraftKings wants the safety of knowing that they locked in a win. They're less concerned. This is the edge on DraftKings, FanDuel, SuperDraft, wherever you play your DFS MMA. The edge is the average player is looking more for safety of the win as opposed to scoring upside. I'd rather take a shot on a fighter who's less likely to win, but if they do win, it's super likely to be in a high scoring fashion. That's much more important for me in my MMA lineup. So yeah, this card might get a little weird like that, where there aren't too many clear. We haven't gotten through the whole card. Spoiler alert, Big Marley. Jeez. But we might find that on this card, there's no one we really want to pay up for. Or we might find that, hey, there's a couple of middling salary fighters. And I think we're going to get to some exciting fights here coming up where we think we might be able to get a big score, but maybe not. As a matter of fact, as I look through the rest of this card, I'm seeing a couple other pretty gross ones. So let's see what we get through as we keep breaking this one down. Speaking of, actually what I think is a low-key great fight on this card. I love this one. Looking forward to it. Casey Kenny used to be my boy, but he lost that status when he talked shit about Megan Anderson. Sorry, bro. You're out as my boy. Still a good fighter, though. He's taking on Song Yadong. Casey Kenny, minus 122. Song Yadong, plus 100. I think these guys are both really, really good fighters, Big Marley. I like them both a lot. I think it's a super close fight. I think the odds are really good. But how do you see this one going down, man? It's really close on paper. Fight goes to decision, minus 164. So not necessarily looking for a finish here from either guy, but should be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, this is our fight of the night right here. I cannot wait for this one, and I think it'll be real close. I would favor Song Yadong in the first round. I would favor Casey Kenny in the third round, and I think it's going to come down to that second. And I don't know, man. It's just going to be a real close fight where I think Song Yadong's got the better hands, more power. He's going to be faster early anyways. But Casey Kenny just works a little bit harder. I think he's going to have a little bit higher pace, and I also think his kicks are better. He can keep this on the outside, spams up kicks, and then he can also work his grappling game, where I think if either one of them gets takedowns, I think they can do okay in top control, but I would trust Kenny a lot more in top control. And even if he's taken down, I would think he's more likely to get a reversal or something like that. So I do favor him on the ground, and that's why I'm going to pick him to win. But I just think it's a split decision type of fight where if it is back and forth, I don't know that they're going to pay off even their mid-range salary. But they also both have higher upside because this is going to be one of the highest paced fights on the card, and they are the mid-range price of the week. So I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with this. I'll probably be pretty even, like 33% each, and then 34% of my lineups not have it, something like that. So I'm just going to sit back and enjoy this one, and hopefully I have the winner in the optimal lineup leading into the last fights.
There we go. I like it, and I'm still confused as far as how I think this one's actually going to score for fantasy purposes. But Dan, how do you see this fight going down? Do you think Kenny uses a grappling heavy plan here against Song, or a little sort of mix of everything from both guys?
Mix of everything, just like every Casey Kenny fight. He's never just stood with someone or just grappled with someone. He's always mixing it up. I guess highly Alating, but I'm talking about guys on this level, top 15 or borderline top 15 like Song Yadong, not some guy that you can just go cruise in first gear against and whoop on. That's not going to be the case here. This is going to be a very competitive back and forth fight. It's going to come down to the wire. It's going to come down to who pulls it out at the end of the day. In Casey Kenny's defense regarding the Megan Anderson thing, he was asked a question and he was put on the spot and he simply answered the question. So it's not like he went out of his way to talk trash. He was asked a question.
You're a defender, man. You're such a defender.
I'm just laying out facts. He was asked a question.
You could also, there's other ways to answer that question when you're in public.
Yeah, he probably should have said no comment, but it is what it is. I mean, you can't force a guy to,
So we putting the douchebaggery on O'Malley in that scenario? Is that
100%? O'Malley and his yes man, Tim Welsh, were egging. Firstly, they were probably smoking a lot of weed. Secondly, he asked him that question. When you ask a grown man a question, I mean, he answered it. It was what it was, and some people didn't like the answer. It is what it is. But as far as this fight is concerned, I think that Song Yadong's got faster hands. I think he's got more powerful hands, but I think Casey Kenny's got more kicks in his arsenal. I think he's got the wrestling in his back pocket. So I don't really fucking know, man. I'm going to go Casey just because he does have the wrestling background, but I mean, I ain't sitting here looking you in the eye with a straight face counting out Song Yadong. I think Song's very dangerous. I don't think that Casey is anywhere near as fast or dynamic as his training partner, Kyler Phillips. And I think that Song Yadong, how old is he? Like 26? Like,
very young.
I know he's been like 19 for like the last 10 years, but he's 23 allegedly. He always changes ages, but right now it says he's 23. I mean, I expect improvements from a 23-year-old kid, right? So Casey via split decision.
Yeah, I mean, can I do some MMA math and be like, all right, well, if Casey Kenny was going up against Cody Stamen, who would you favor? BigMarley. I mean, if you had that fight, just real quick off the top of your head, maybe it's too off the top of your head to answer that. What would you do there? Casey Kenny versus Stamen.
That's close.
No.
I don't know my favorite Stamen for takedowns.
Yeah,
I think it'd be a lot like that Song Yadong fight. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. It's really close.
Yeah, it's too close.
I'd favor Casey.
Yeah, you do Casey. I'm going with Casey Kenny here as well. I like Song Yadong a lot, and I think I'm going to mirror what you said, Dan. This fight, it's really the odds are pretty spot on. It should be a pick 'em. It's going to be hard to tell. I'm going to slightly favor Casey Kenny here to get the job done, but the confidence level in that call, especially with Song so young and potentially improving significantly between fights, we really don't know what we're going to see fight to fight when you're talking about a 21, 23, maybe 25 who's pretending to be 23. I don't know, but you could see little bits of improvement there. But I'm going to go with Kenny here, but ever so slightly. A super close fight, I think. And speaking of super close fights, we've got the next one on the card. Tisha Torres taking on Angela Hill, with Torres coming in as a slight minus 142 favorite and Hill plus 115. Fight goes to decision minus 340. Everybody hates on Angela Hill. I don't know why, BigMarley. No one ever thinks that Angela Hill is very good. They love to hate on her. And I don't know. I'm looking at this fight. How do you see this one going down? I mean, I see a lot of striking happening, and it's going to come down to who Adelaide Bird thinks did better. I think in a really close fight, like every Angela Hill fight comes down. Usually Angela Hill comes out on the bad side of those decisions.
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone's really down on Hill anymore. I think that was more from just her past when she didn't have a ground game And she also wasn't as good on the feet, I don't think, in the past. And she's made more of a turnaround than maybe anyone else in WMMA. Now she's one of the better strikers in the division. She is a high output striker. She's been able to defend takedowns. She's had success on the ground herself. So I think she's finally come into her own. She's definitely where she belongs in the division. She's going to be fighting some of the top competition. And then Torres, she's coming off, I think, a 4-fight losing streak to, top of the division. And now she's coming off of 2 straight wins. These two fought before a long time ago, like 2015, something like that. And Torres won just by getting 2 takedowns. She had a takedown in 2 different rounds. She kept about 10 minutes, 9 minutes of control time. I think I totaled it up. She would have scored about 80 DraftKings points in that fight, which won't cut it at 8.7K because she's going to have to do the same thing in this fight. She's got to win this fight through the ground. I don't think she can win a decision against Hill if this is a 15-minute striking match. And I don't think she's knocking Hill out. But I do think she's alive for a submission if she can get the fight to the ground or just win by grinding this fight out, get some takedowns, rack up control time, land some ground strikes here and there. And that's what I'm picking to happen. I also think nobody's going to roster Tisha at 8.7K, so I kind of like her just for that reason. But, yeah, on paper, there's not really much to like on the Tisha Torres side. You're going to really need a submission or a real grappling heavy victory for her to score well. There's a lot of favorites with way better ceilings. So if I'm playing Tisha, it's just for ownership purposes. And then on the Hill side, I do think if she wins this fight, she will pay off her DraftKings salary because it would mean that it's mostly a striking match and she's probably putting up some decent volume. But Tisha's dancing around a lot. I think she's going to be hard to hit. And if she is getting takedowns, Hill's spending time on her back, it's going to take away from her scoring. So I'll probably just be light on this fight as a whole, but I think Hill will have more ownership, so I'll probably be a little bit underweight to her, and then Torres with no ownership, I'll be a little bit overweight too, and I'll take her to win 2 rounds, if not 3.
There we go. How about you, Dan? You think Tisha Torres is going to use some of that wrestling that she doesn't use very often to steal a couple rounds here and cement a decision win against Anita Hill? Angela.
Possibly, but I think Hill's wrestling defense has gotten better, so I don't think it's going to be as available as it was the first time they fought. But the issue with Hill is that she'll come out super hard, and then she'll tend to coast, and then she'll cry robbery. And I haven't seen any accountability, any responsibility, any hey, you know what? I lost this fight fair and square. I hear her talking about she beat Yan Xiaonan when she lost 14 plus minutes of that fight. So I don't see someone that's, trying to improve on their mistakes. I just see she's at her peak right now. She's a solid Muay Thai striker for MMA standards. Her ground game has definitely caught up a little bit. I'm going to go with Tisha Torres via split decision. So it's going to be closer than the first time, but I still got Tisha getting her arm raised.
Yeah, that split decision is just how a lot of Hill's fights end up going. I've got a full fade going on Tisha Torres for fantasy purposes. She just doesn't do anything that scores well. And I'm not fooled by that last fight against Hughes. You didn't fool me, Tisha Torres. That's not what I'm going to expect ever again. So the vast majority of Torres fights, they look like these, right? The decisions, 81 points. Okay, her best fight, her best potential score. Against Waterson, 92. Top potential score, but tons of 70s and 80s and just mediocre scores along the way. So for me, Torres just doesn't do enough to justify an $8,700 price tag on this card. And especially against Hill, who's a tough chick. And I just don't see any way that Torres is knocking her down. Just very unlikely to get a knockout or a knockdown or anything. Could she get a takedown? Maybe. But I just can't count on Torres going for takedowns because she rarely does. She's done it a couple times, but she's got a long history of not doing that. So, I'm more interested on the Angela Hill side, but I do agree with you. I think that the end result of this fight is more likely to be Torres by split decision win, just because that's how Angela Hill fights tend to go. Her opponents win by split decision. All right. Another really exciting fight, and we're getting to the meat and potatoes of this card, guys, and this is where it gets exciting. Vicente Luque taking on Michael Chiesa, even odds, no favorite. I love it. Dan, break this fight down for me. How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, so obviously Chiesa looks like a new man at 170 pounds. Once he grabs a hold of you, he's very tough to get off, and he can blanket these guys. He can go out there, get takedowns, get top control. But this is the first time he's going to be tested at 170 pounds. You know, he's no longer fighting Diego Sanchez. He's no longer fighting Condit, who can't stuff a takedown. The best win on the current streak is Magny, but we know that certain guys have been able to just walk through Magny like butter. No one's ever walked through Vicente Luque. Even the guys that beat him have to go through something at least. And now there is the case to be made about the Leon Edwards fight and the Michael Graves fight, because I believe that Chiesa is going to come out here with a similar game plan. But I think this is going to be the first time you see Michael Chiesa go through some adversity at 170 pounds. You haven't seen it yet, but at 55s, whenever adversity presented itself, he didn't deal with it the best. You know, the Pettis fight, the Kevin Lee fight. There's other options. There's other examples, excuse me. With Luque, I think he's one of the most dangerous fighters in the welterweight division. He's got knockout power with both hands. He's got heavy calf kicks. He's got a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And the area that he's criticized in, the wrestling, I don't think it's that bad either. I think he can get back up from bottom. I think that when he gets clinched up against the fence, he's shown that he can separate. I felt like that Leon Edwards fight, even though that was 5 years ago now, I felt like that Leon Edwards fight was a step in the right direction from the Mike Graves fight. And now he's got a chance to take it an even step further. And I think he shows the best version of himself. There was a point there where I was getting kind of worried for Luque around the Barberena fight. But I think the Wonder Boy fight kind of woke him up. And these last few fights, I don't know if you can believe it, but I feel like we've been seeing a better Vicente Luque. Look, don't get me wrong. It's still the same, brawler, just aggressive Brazilian forward striker. He's always going to be that guy, but I feel like he's kind of cleaned up a couple things defensively, and just all the experience is paying off. So I know Chiesa is a super popular pick this week. I know literally everybody is on Chiesa this week, except me. I'm gonna go with Luque to finish Chiesa, chop him down with calf kicks, and eventually once he starts shooting from a mile out, and once that takedown doesn't have the same spring as it does early on because he's getting chopped down, I'm going to go Luque via Darce choke.
All right. I like the call. Big Marley, how do you see this one going down?
All right. Yeah, I think the winner scores well. So it's my favorite DraftKings fight on the card. I'm definitely going to be heavy on both sides, but yeah, I'm on the Luque side as well. I just think he's more dangerous everywhere. On the feet, it's not even close. I think he just destroys Chiesa on the feet here. And then on the ground, I mean, Chiesa's great on the ground. He's the one that's definitely going to be landing the takedowns, but I'm not sure that he's not going to get submitted trying for one of those takedowns. He was submitted by Pettis. He was submitted by Kevin Lee. I think Luque could do the same thing. But I don't know. I see him landing a body kick and then Chiesa shooting for a desperate takedown. And Luque getting a guillotine. That's kind of how I see the fight going. But at the same time, if Chiesa wins this fight, he might look like he should be a minus 300 favorite. He could just completely dominate Luque, maybe get a submission of his own or just wet blanket him for 3 rounds. He doesn't strike at all, like not even on the ground. He's not too active, but he's not going to do anything on the feet really except for throw a kick here and there. His whole game is to go for the takedowns and try and grind out a 3-round decision, if not get a submission. If he wins, he's going to score well, but he's going to be our most popular underdog of the week. So I'll be underweight and I'll be overweight to Luque. Give me Luque by submission.
There we go. I'm going a little different than you guys here. I am going to pick Chiesa to get this win. Listen, the road to, losses is paved with people fading Luque in any sort of DraftKings or fantasy setting. He's smashed almost every time he's won a fight. So I acknowledge Luque is really great, but I really like Chiesa as a fighter. I like what he does, and I think what he does will his style, his grappling heavy style will counter Luque pretty well. I think the danger is going to be obviously when Chiesa is closing the distance, but I believe that Chiesa will be able to grab a hold of Luque, get the body lock, drag him down, and hold on to him for entire rounds. That's what he's good at. He's like Aldo a little bit. Chiesa reminds me a little bit of Sterling in that way. He's a tough fighter to get a handle on, and when he gets his arms around you, it's really hard to get him off. So I like Chiesa to be able to execute that game plan against Luque, but of course we acknowledge that Luque has a a cannon for, in his right hand and can knock anybody out at any time. He's a significantly better striker than Chiesa if the fight stays standing. I just don't think it will. Chiesa doesn't fight that way. He's going to close the distance, and either you're going to get knocked out doing it, or he's going to find a way to take Luque, who's not the greatest defensive wrestler, without the greatest takedown defense historically. I think he'll be able to get him down and find a way to get this decision, but acknowledge it's close. I love the fact that Chiesa is priced sub 8K on DraftKings as well. It makes me more excited about the play. And obviously the money, since the fight has started, if you watch the chart, Dan agrees with what you've said, that everybody and their mother is clearly on Chiesa in this fight, and all the money's flowing in on him. So pick 'em fight. Give me Chiesa, but love this fight overall. Can't wait to watch it. And I think whoever wins is going to score well enough to pay off their salary.
As far as that Sterling comparison, do you think if Luque throws an illegal knee that Chiesa is going to try to get that DQ?
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, you think he will, right? I don't know. It's like, sure. I'm not going to question that on a fighter until I see them do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to question that until they do it. Chiesa's he's a cool dude. I mean, he's, I like him. I like him on the broadcast. I like him in general. So
I like him too.
What's that?
I like him too. I got nothing against him as a man. Not at all.
No, of course. But I like him as a fighter. And I just think his style is a good counter for Luque. We haven't seen Luque in there against somebody who really exclusively wants to take him down. So we'll see how he does in that scenario, because, I'll just bring up Luque's fights. But I mean, Woodley, he ain't taking you down. Price isn't taking you down. Brown, not really. Thompson, not really. The fact that he went to split against Perry, I'm throwing that one out. I don't know what the fuck that fight. I don't know what that was. Luque should have destroyed Perry, and this is actually disturbing.
He smashed Perry's nose, and Perry was never the same. But if you're going to read me his opponents,
I'm just saying none of these guys.
Read me Chiesa's opponents too.
But none of these guys were going for the takedown. What I'm saying is this is a stylistic matchup that's a little bit different from what we've seen from and with Chiesa. Listen, I get that there's some scrubs in here, but Rafael dos Anjos ain't nobody's scrub. I mean, Diego Sanchez. What's that?
He's a 55er. I
know, but he ain't nobody's scrub. Listen, this is a badass dude, and I don't care what weight class you beat Rafael dos Anjos. That means you're good at MMA. Like, you're good at MMA. Magny ain't nobody's fool either. These guys are pretty good. So, the loss to Pettis, tough to forgive a submission loss to Pettis here, but Dariush, he's got big wins. So I like Chiesa. I like Chiesa in the spot. I think his style counters Luque pretty well, but it's 110. It's minus 110. This is a close fight. You never know which way it's going to go. All right. Co-main event. Jose Aldo takes on Pedro Munhoz. Another banger. Even odds, minus 112, minus 108. So it's a pick 'em fight. Fight goes to decision prop, minus 158. Big Marley, I'll toss this one to you to start off. Aldo, Munhoz, really close odds. How do you see this one going down?
Yes, it's being just a great high-level striking match. But for DraftKings, for me, it's Munoz or pass. I just think he's going to have a much easier time paying off his salary at 7.6K. For Aldo to pay off 8.6K, I think he's got to get a knockout in rounds 1, rounds 2. I don't even know that a round 3 knockout will get him there, just because he's not active enough. He's not going for takedowns. I don't see him submitting Pedro Munhoz. So you're really shooting for that knockout, and that's the same with a lot of guys on this card, where if you want to take a shot on the knockout, that's the only way that they can score fine. That's the only way they can score 100 plus, and that's fine. But I'll take my shots on other guys, and I'm picking Munoz just to win this fight on volume. I think he probably loses the first round just by Aldo being the better striker. You're worried about the power a little bit, but then Munoz picks it up as the fight goes along, just outlands Aldo, wins on the scorecards. If that's the case, then he probably won't score very well either, but he is an underdog, and I'm picking him to win, so I'll be fairly heavy on him. But since it's the co-main event, I think both guys might be more owned than I would like, so I'm not against just avoiding this fight and going to lesser-owned fights.
Dan, take a look at these scores that Aldo's put up in his career, fantasy points-wise. The win against Vera, 60 points, not good. Moicano, 80 points. First round Merc destruction of Jeremy Stevens, 112. There you go. That's the nuts. And every other win, 60 points. This is a 5-rounder where he only scored 60 fantasy points in a win. So Aldo does not have a history, even in his wins, of producing enough to really make him worth rostering on DraftKings or FanDuel. How do you see the fight going from a who's going to win perspective?
Man, tough fight because Jose Aldo is one of the greatest fighters of all time. I mean, there's not a weakness in any of his techniques. His boxing's amazing. His kicks are great. His jiu-jitsu, his takedown defense is legendary. His takedown offense. The only issue is he's so damn explosive that, he will tend to fade late in fights. And, fading late against a guy like Pedro Munoz could possibly be a recipe for disaster. But on the flip side, guys that are really good at weaseling decisions have had success against Pedro Munoz, whether it's John Dodson, whether it's Frankie Edgar. And I know both of those decisions are deemed controversial, but guess what? We're in Texas here. So get ready for another controversial decision. I do lean Munoz because he is the dog here, and I do think he's going to be fighting with more volume. But one thing about Munoz is he gets hit a lot, man, and getting hit by these Aldo bombs, it might not be the best recipe for success either. So I see it being a very competitive fight. I'm going to lean with Munoz to finally get the close decision win because I know these close decisions haven't been going his way, but I'm going to lean his way. But let's see what happens because every time I count out Aldo, he tends to win, man. So right when I think he's done, I mean, the guy is such a legend and such a badass. Even that fight he had with Peter Yan was great. And then again, like I mentioned, those fights with Pedro Munoz against Dodson and Edgar really let me down because it's like I thought it was clear that he won, but apparently it's not clear enough. And Jose Aldo is very good at winning close decisions, so that's why I'm not super confident on it. But I do kind of see a couple advantages for Munoz, so let's pick him via close decision.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I think these guys are still good. Like I don't believe that Aldo is over the hill at all. He's looked good in his fights. He's looked like Jose Aldo. What's happened is, he was a champ for a while, and now, you're going to lose to Piotr Jan. I mean, everybody's going to lose to Jan pretty much. You're going to lose to Volkanovski. Like, everybody's going to lose to Volkanovski. So there's nothing wrong with those losses, and I kind of thought he won against Moraes. So I thought he won that fight against Moraes, or at least it was it was close to the point where, for me, he could have won that fight. So I think Aldo's still good. It doesn't change the fact that he doesn't score well when he wins for the most part. So the only interest I have in Aldo from a DraftKings FanDuel perspective is that, that percentage chance that he just comes in and touches the right spot on Munoz's head in the first round, gets that finish. He throws for power. An early finish is still within reason, but it's probably a 5 to 8% outcome in this type of a fight. So that's about where I want to be exposed to Aldo. Munoz, a little more volume, a little cheaper, but same deal. I don't see him racking up 140 strikes along the way in a decision. So I think Munoz might have a hard time paying off. Marley, I'm starting to believe what you said early, that it doesn't matter because there's a lot of fights on this card that look like they're not going to end with a big score as we've gone through this whole thing. And so, I think at the end, I want to do a recap of these fights and look at like the 3 or 4 that look like they might score well, because there's a lot that kind of fall in this I'm not really that excited for it category. But, my pick to win is Munoz, but, no confidence in that one. None. Aldo's good. I think it's going to come down to a close split decision type situation where the judges just do what they want. And, half of us disagree and we're fighting on Twitter afterwards. Like, I thought he won. I thought he, I'll be like, fighting with Dan on Twitter about who won that shit afterwards. All right, let's go to the main event, boys. My nemesis in life is on this card. Derek Lewis. Love the guy personality wise, but I keep getting burned doubting him. And yet here we are, and I'm doubting him again. The main event, Cyril Gane, Derek Lewis. Gane minus 355, massive favorite. Lewis plus 270. Gane out there last time out looking like freaking Floyd Mayweather boxing skills wise, just looking like a real grizzled vet. And Dan, Lewis literally has only one way he can win a fight. I think there's actually something off about the odds, and I'll point that out in a second here. But with Lewis, it's KO or bust. And it's really interesting that he's plus 270, but his inside the distance prop by KO is plus 390. I don't really understand that. I think they should be within like 10 points of one another. But maybe I'm reading it wrong, Dan. Is there a way that Derek Lewis wins this fight outside of like the Francis Ngannou mental breakdown in the ring scenario where he doesn't knock out Cyril Gane?
I don't know. I mean, look, here's the thing with this fight. It's that when we talk about KO or bust, like that term just gets thrown around loosely as if the KO doesn't have a big chance of happening. But we're talking about the UFC KO king. We're talking about the guys with the guy with the most KOs in heavyweight history. Look, all the stats say Gane is going to win the striking. All the stats say Gane is going to win the grappling. But all the stats have said that about pretty much every single Derek Lewis opponent. So the stats don't mean shit here. Look, you got to favor Gane. He seems like a future champion. He seems like he's technical everywhere. His striking is on point. He's huge. The way he moves for heavyweight. I mean, the guy's badass. It's just that how's he going to respond getting hit by these shots? There were some spots in that Volkov fight where I was like, man, one of these heavier hitters might actually put him away here. So there's that point of view, but then there's also the Gane is simply better than Derek Lewis. So therefore he's going to win the fight. You have seen some issues in the past with Lewis taking body shots, maybe body kicks, maybe knees. I know Gane watches tape. I know Gane's going to come out here, attack that body. So I do lean Gane, but I ain't laying that price on Gane, man. I mean, not because I don't think he's going to win, but because I'm fucking scared of Derek Lewis in Houston, undefeated in Texas, UFC knockout king. I mean, he beat the champion in Ngannou. He beat the best wrestler in the division, Curtis Blades. He beat Volkov more viciously than Gane did. So, I mean, this guy, we say KO or bust, but this is like the number 2 guy on planet Earth. So I would not disrespect Lewis at all. He will be on a lot of my lineups just because he's got that big knockout shot. But pick Gane.
Dan, is there an arbitrage opportunity here? Plus 390 for KO, the KO finish for Lewis. Minus 355 on Cyril to win the fight. Almost no fathomable path where Lewis wins a decision. I guess, there's always that slim, but is this an arbitrage opportunity? We say, you know what, YOLO, fuck it. Let me put my $390 on Lewis by KO. Let me put another, $390 on Cyril Gane, make the $50, $40 difference there.
I mean, if you want to live life dangerously, try it and let me know how it goes. Try it out. Literally try it out and tell me next week how that goes. I'm
gonna make some money.
I'm
doing
curious.
That. I will be trying that. I will be doing that. I'm gonna throw some lock money on this fight and then watch Beast just win a decision. I don't know how he could do it. I don't know how it happens, but he wins it. He gets a takedown and top control and ground and pound 3 rounds out of 5. Who knows? Big Marl, what do you say?
Yeah, it's an easy one, KO or bust. If Derek Lewis doesn't get the KO, he doesn't win this fight. Gane is better everywhere except for power, but Derek Lewis's last fight was KO or bust, and he got the KO, and I didn't have any Derek Lewis. I was probably all in on Blades. My night was completely over. I'm going to do the same thing, though. Give me Gane to just completely destroy Lewis in this fight. I don't know that he gets a finish of his own, and if he doesn't, I don't know how much he's going to score because you got to be worried about the Derek Lewis power. So you're not going to throw your usual volume, I would think. But he could also get takedowns, have a lot of success in top control, maybe get a submission, a ground and pound finish. So there's definitely a ceiling there for Gane. But the ownership's definitely going to be there as well. So I might just take an underweight approach to this fight and hope that he wins with a 70-point striking decision. And then with Lewis, I mean, he's the cheapest guy on the card, but he's not going to go overlooked. People are going to be taking that shot on the KO. He'll be at least 20% owned, I would say. So that's more than I want to get. I'll just fade and get different elsewhere. So give me Gane to make it look easy.
I learned a lesson about betting against Derek Lewis when he fought Blades. I mean, was there ever a scenario where Lewis should have been taken down in the first round, ground and pound finished, within the first couple of minutes of the fight, than that Blades fight. And we saw how it played out. He's a dangerous man. And it's scary to even go in for the takedown against the Derek Lewis, clearly, because it took Blades almost a whole round to even attempt one. And then, a second round, he says, fuck it, let me just close my eyes and try to get this takedown. And obviously, when he woke up, Lewis is standing there with his arm raised in the center of the octagon. So, you can never count Lewis out. And if you're going to bet this fight, like I said, you got to hedge it with Lewis, and it's a tough way to bet a fight. I don't hate the idea on this one of even going with something like, the under 4.5 round prop or the under 5 round prop. I don't see Lewis lasting 5 rounds. I don't see it going 5 rounds. Let me see what the fight doesn't go decision minus 200. I think that should probably be higher. I don't see it going that way. Lewis, if he wins, he's getting a knockout. If he's not doing that, I think Cyril along the way is going to be able to hurt Lewis, get him down, finish him. We haven't seen that very often with Lewis, but, I keep thinking it's going to happen one of these days. And, I got to keep getting back on that train. But Dan, you should know that, and the people who watch the show and follow my notes know that was one of the most painful lessons you're ever going to learn in sports betting when he beat, when actually it was worse for me when Lewis beat Ngannou. At the time, I had my heaviest bet ever on Ngannou, and then I doubled down, said, let me get my money back when he fought Blades, and then I doubled the loss. So essentially my sportsbook account went to zero, had to borrow money from the parents to pay the mortgage that month. It wasn't pretty at all, but I'm going back to it. I keep getting back on the train. My pick is Gane. I took Gane to win this fight, but obviously you want to get both sides. This is an all-in fight for me, though. I think it's gonna end inside the distance, BigMarley. I don't think you should fade this one.
I don't even think I'm gonna have it in half my lineups.
I don't get why, because who else you paying up for?
Because if Gane doesn't, I just think he point fights his way to a decision, and I don't know that that's on the optimal. And if Derek Lewis, I'm not going to bank on the KO. I'd just rather, there's no way he scores highly unless it's an early KO. Even if he gets a 5th round knockout, he's probably not in the optimal lineup.
Not going to do it.
I'm just going to bank on Gane being worried about the power and just doubling up Lewis on strikes, winning all 5 rounds, 75 points.
That might outscore a lot of these favorites. That's the problem. Like, who's going to outscore?
Yeah, but he also costs so much more, so you're paying down somewhere else that might end up hurting you. I definitely want Gane exposure. That's where my exposure is going to go, but it might be like 45% Gane, 0% Lewis.
Yeah, no, I feel that. I'm just looking at, like, who's going to outscore that? Kape? Miles Johns? There's just no one here that stands out. Munoz will, if he wins. That's the guy. All right. Before we get to the kill shot, guys, I do want to just do a quick run through of the fights that actually look good on paper, and it gives you an idea of how few there were. I would say, Munoz Simmons looked pretty good to me in terms of who, the winner and how they might score. Menifield, if he wins, probably scores well. So I'm kind of interested in this fight. Big inside the distance prop. That's 2. Chiesa, Luque. Those 3. Any other ones stand out to you guys? Like, Dan, any of these fights stand out to you as like the winner's going to score well, regardless of who it is?
I think you laid it out pretty well. Maybe there's a finish in Osbourne and Kape. Fiziev, if he knocks out Bobby Green. I know people are trying to avoid him because of his price, but he knocks out Bobby Green in the first round, and he's going to have a big score. So, yeah. And then Derek Lewis, which way he can win by. You know what happens if he wins. So
I think I put Luque Chiesa as my only 5-star play on the cheat sheet.
Yeah, there you go. That's the closest to a real 5-star play on this card, where you really want almost every lineup. It's a tricky one. All right, guys, let's go to the kill shot. Dan, I'll start with you. Who do you like in this card? Maybe a little under the radar to not just get a win, but hopefully be in that nuts lineup.
Yeah, I think this is what you DraftKings players like to refer to as boom or bust. Vicente Luque. Look, he loses this fight, and that floor ain't going to be looking too good. He's going to be hugged. He's going to get humped. He might have to take plan B the next day. But if he wins this fight, he is going to finish Michael Chiesa and score big time and be on the optimal lineup. So Vicente Luque is my kill shot.
There we go. I like it. How about you, Big Marley? Who do you like as a kill shot here?
I'm going to go Osbourne, first round submission.
That's funny. I like Osbourne as well. So good call there. My kill shot on this one is going to be Chiesa. So I'm going head to head with the GOAT himself. Doesn't feel good. Feels a little uncomfortable. I'm going to shout out my boy Vince, who's also on Chiesa as a kill shot on this card. So I got to mention that as well. But I like Chiesa. That's my guy. I met him in person once. Fucking tall, handsome, good dude. Friendly also. So
yeah, me too. I was probably like 200 pounds at the time, and he looked way bigger than me. So he's a big dude.
Shockingly tall in person. Well, I'm shockingly short in person, but he's shockingly tall in person. So yeah, good dude. But that's not the reason. I just like his style here. And again, I think we all agree we love that fight for DraftKings purposes. If I had to go, I had a secondary thought, like if I had to go with another one, but I don't think it's a kill shot to say Munoz. I just think he's going to be really, really not Pedro, but Johnny. But I think he's going to be really, really popular. So I don't really see that as a kill shot. That's just a favorite that's going to score well if he wins. So there we go. That'll do it for the UFC 265 Lewis Gane breakdown. Guys, a little reminder for those of you who are still with us. DFS Army has full blast preseason NFL coverage. We do not fuck around when it comes to NFL across the board. Projections, cheat sheets, notes, everything. Tonight is the Hall of Fame game if you're watching this on Thursday. And if you're not, preseason going strong this weekend and beyond. We got a special going on. So if you sign up for VIP access, which will get you the MMA, get you everything, MMA, NASCAR, every single sport that we carry, optimizer, projections, cheat sheets, chat with pros. 300K winners in one day a month ago. Where else do you get that? The tools are proven to work. If you use promo code preseason, you get 50% off your first month. Our VIP plan is $69.99 a month, guys. That's lower than the competition by a mile. We do that because we want regular players to be able to afford what we do so we can have average Joes competing on a level playing field with pros. We do it all the time, DFS Army. Like I said, 300K winners in one day across 3 different sports a few weeks back, all regular average Joes taking down giant tournaments. You see those DFS Army avatars in first place everywhere you look. Get on board, see what the hype is about, smash NFL preseason, get signed up at DFS Army as a VIP, promo code preseason. Do it now. You won't regret it. For myself, for Dan, for Big Marley, good luck this weekend. DFS Army VIPs, cheat sheets being populated right now for this card. Domination Station already loaded and ready to rock. So good luck this weekend, everybody. We'll see you at the top of the leaderboards. Later.